We don't leave our humanity at the door when we step into the therapy room. And joining our community is kind of this safe space that we don't always get as providers, right? Like, many of us are in our own therapy or have been in the past or whatnot. And that's great.
Are you going through life blind? This is Eyes Wide Open with Nick Thompson. On this podcast, we share knowledge and stories that build human connection while elevating stigmatized societal issues such as mental health, holistic wellness, culture, free speech, and more. All to ensure we show up in the world with our eyes wide open. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Eyes Wide Open. Our guests today are... I'm already going to screw up your name. I already know it. I wrote it down, and I'm still going to mess it up.
You got this.
Our guests today are Cassandra Musumeci.
Yes.
And Andrea Rockefeller. Cassandra and Andrea are both licensed mental health counselors and the co-founders of the Human Therapist Community, which is dedicated to creating space for therapists to be human beings and participate in conversations with one another, book clubs, and collaborate, network, all of those things that help make you human. They're also dedicated to creating a supportive community that helps therapists grow both professionally and personally. And most of all, remind each other that all of the therapists are humans too. Welcome, both of you. Thank you for taking time to come today. How are we doing?
Great. Thank you so much for having us. We're excited.
Yeah, I'm excited. I found, I don't even remember when I found your page. Do you guys remember? Because we messaged a little bit. I think I was traveling, actually, and I found it. And I thought it was really cool because there's so much social media presence now in therapy, and it's done a really helpful job of, removing stigmas and getting people talking more and more about stuff. And I know, and I've met several therapists over the last few years online who are kind of like, giving tips and tricks and talking, but I never really realized, who's supporting them? And I feel like what you guys have done and what you've created with your community is give a place for therapists to sort of interact with one another and kind of build that community. And I thought that was really cool and appreciated that.
Nick, I still remember when we first were interacting with each other and we were like, oh my goodness, Nick wants to interact with us. He wants to talk to us. He's interested in our mission. So I thought that was really amazing too.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it was my pleasure, and it's been fun getting to know you guys a little bit too. But before we get into your mission and what you're doing, I like to start off by asking my guests some fun questions to sort of break the ice. So I'll start with you, Andrea, because you're to the left of Cassandra, so you get to go first. When you were a little kid, what did you want to be when you were growing up, and how did that change over the years to lead you to not only become a therapist, but also start this community? Or maybe I'll ask you both later how you started the community. So maybe talk about how you ended up being a therapist.
Sure. I wanted to be a dancer. So that was not what I was going to be, right? I danced my entire life. I teach dance currently still, so it's still part of my life, but I am not a prima ballerina and never was going to be. So as I started, as I went through college, I knew I wanted to help people, and I wasn't really sure what that was going to look like, and eventually landed in master's programs through psychology and then finally mental health counseling. And it kind of just steered me to the direction of being a therapist. My mom was a social worker, so it's kind of in my blood, I guess. But
so it was in your blood, and so was dancing. How did you decide? When did you decide that you weren't going to be a professional ballerina? Was there a moment when you were like, I don't have it?
When I was 12 and I looked at the other 12-year-olds who looked like ballerinas and I didn't necessarily fit that picture. No, I knew when I went to college that I minored in dance, but I didn't want to major in dance. I didn't necessarily want that to be my entire life. So I think going to college and knowing that I wasn't majoring in dance was the telltale sign that it just wasn't going to go further than that.
And when you became a therapist, I got to just ask this, what was it like coming out? Because I know when we've talked before, you both worked for other people and now you have private practices. So I kind of I kind of want to dive in a little bit to what that was like for you, because I already know, but I think it's good to know for the audience that you had this sort of transition out of college and into becoming a therapist, but then you had another transition that took you into being the founder of a private practice.
Yeah, I mean, that's connected to so many things. When we made that jump, I had just had twins. So I was ready to spend more time with my children and not be tied down to the 9 to 5 working for somebody else. I think that was the main goal there for that transition. Freedom.
And
Is what
for
it's like.
Yeah, and for what I don't think maybe a lot of people don't know is that when you're and you obviously know better than me, but when you're not working as a therapist, like you're not getting paid. Like if you're not in session, you're not really getting paid. So that can be, I can see how that would be something that is troublesome as you work for somebody else and then have children and need time away and have a much more complex schedule, we'll say.
Yeah, I mean, I went the happy route of like, yay, schedule flexibility and all of that. But as you pointed out, the scary part of it, jumping from stability and having a
Mm,
salary, it took a lot of conversations with each other, with our partners, with our families, just to make sure that it was doable.
yeah,
Because, yeah, of course, you have to build a caseload. And when you're not sitting in 1-to-1 sessions, you're doing all of this work for no money. No,
yeah,
that's free.
yeah. That's crazy. It's a very different profession than I think a lot of people are used to, and I think it's something that's good to highlight too, because um, I think oftentimes, and now I'm already like starting deeper conversations, but I think oftentimes like you have this idea that whatever happens in session, that's all there is. But there's like case notes and insurance. If you take insurance, you got to chase down insurance companies that don't want to pay you and don't want to pay you what you say is your hourly rate. There's like all sorts of things that go into that. So I think it's good for people to know that, yeah, there's the in session and the, upskilling your skill set and learning, new skills and new strategies and new research and all of that stuff. And then on top of that, it's very just time consuming stuff like accounting and things that you don't probably want to do.
Yes, that's one of the things we always used to joke about was we went to school and we got degrees to be therapists, and now we are accountants, we are entrepreneurs, we are like we wear 50 million different hats and are learning how to do things that was never on our list of things we were going to do when we grew up, right?
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but I had to take accounting twice because I'm not very good at math in college. And it's like the basic level of accounting stuff that you really at the time are like, I am never going to use this. And then lo and behold, here you are. And now you're an accountant for your own business.
Excel spreadsheets are our
Ex-
savior.
Me too. Me too. I sent my accountant this year for my taxes because I have my media LLC, which is for the podcast. And I don't really, I mean, I don't really, it's not, I do it because I like it. I don't do it because it makes a lot of money. And all it really seems to do around tax season is complicate my taxes. So I've just like put everything in a spreadsheet, send it to my accountant. I'm like, you just do this. You tell me what it is and go with it, because it's so complicated when you have like a business. It gets very complicated. So Cassandra, let's hear your story. What did you want to be when you were a young child? How did that change over the years and lead you to becoming a therapist? And then ultimately starting your business.
I definitely knew I wasn't going to be a ballerina. I took one dance lesson and I was like running for my parents to never send me again. I've shared that with Andrea before. But growing up, honestly, I wanted to either be a teacher or a pediatrician. And I went to college and I was actually undeclared in undergrad the first semester. And I quickly learned that I was more so interested in psychology than anything else. So I took psychology in undergrad, and then senior year, kind of scrambling, trying to figure out what the heck can I do with this degree now, right? And do I want to pursue a career or school further, or are there career options with this route? And that's where I landed in our graduate program. Andrea and I actually both went through the same graduate program together. at different times, not together actually. I went through it a few years later. She went through it, and then we met up at one of our agency jobs together. So it was then that I realized I wanted to help people in this way, in the mental health counseling specific entity.
And did you guys, when you met, did you know right away that you were going to become good friends, or did that take a little while, or how did you guys become friends?
Pretty sure someone gave Andrea a heads up that she would be meeting me and that we might get along.
One of our professors kind of forced us to be friends from Cassandra, and you guys are really going to like each other.
But if you would have told me back then, you're going to meet someone today that you're going to start a private practice with in a few years, I would not have believed you.
Wow. I'm not surprised. I mean, and also starting a business with a friend is its own challenge. Did you guys have any worries or concerns about that when you were deciding to branch off and start your own thing?
I think so.
We also weren't necessarily like hang out all the time type friends. Like we were colleagues at our job. We became
Like
friends,
work friends.
but it's not like starting a business with somebody that you've known for, 30 years and you've been best friends forever. So there were still some boundaries there in a way.
Yeah. I think that's a really good distinction, though, because I do think it would have been a much different conversation had it been the opposite, where we grew up together as childhood friends or something like
Right.
that. Yeah.
So and you guys kind of had already known probably how each other works and things like that, just because you were colleagues as opposed to specific friends. So I guess that probably helped too.
Mm-hmm.
You started your business a few years ago, and then you decided that you were going to start the human therapist community. And I gave a little bit of an intro, which is based on what you guys told me and what I read on your website. But in both of your words, and you can take turns, we'll go, Cassandra, you can go first this time. What was your motivation for starting to build this community of therapists where therapists could feel better supported and like humans, which is just crazy concept. You're human too.
Yeah, it's wild, isn't it? To actually think that a therapist can be human too. We really started our Instagram account. That's where all of this came to be, where we were more so when we first initiated it, talking about motivation for, stepping out, taking a leap of faith really in any aspect of your career, because we had just freshly left our agency work, left, so much that felt stable to us at the time in certain ways financially, and stepped into these roles. So that's where we initially went with it. And it kind of morphed into talking to other therapists and creating content for that therapist role specifically. What we found is, although we had each other, it still feels lonely being a therapist in private practice. It's, kind of isolating at times, especially if you're a therapist making that transition from agency work to the private practice role. One thing about agency work is, as difficult, as challenging as it is, you're surrounded by other people every single day, and then you shift to the private practice role and you're like, wait a second, this is still hard work we're doing, and I don't have anyone around. Especially for us, it was, in the heart of the pandemic. So we, despite us living kind of far apart, we really weren't seeing each other, let alone anyone at that time.
That man, I was just talking about this the other day with my with my girlfriend about how like it's so hard to imagine, because something showed up on my Google Photos, like a reminder of like it was 2020, and it was just like probably, I think it was like August or September, and just like pictures like in masks and all this stuff of just like me and my dog. And I was like, man, like thinking back to like how lonely that was and how hard that was. And then even like at that time, I was seeing my therapist like at least once a week, because I'm introverted. So I did okay for a while, but then it kind of got to the point where it was like, oh, I haven't talked to anyone in real life in a week. Like, does my voice still work? I literally at one point was like, hello? Okay, it still works. I remember that specifically. And that's such an isolating time. And I can imagine as a therapist, when your job is to build connection with someone and build a relationship with someone, and now you're forced to do it over Zoom or some sort of video communication platform. What was that? And I'm kind of going down a different path, but like, what was that like for you guys, not only starting a new practice, but having to find a new way to connect with people? It's hard. Like, I had already known my therapist, so like going virtual wasn't a big deal for us. But I also know a lot of people that started therapy during the pandemic and only know their therapist through video. So what was that like for you on the therapist side to try and build that therapeutic relationship, which is so important to the work that you do? You can both take turns. I don't care who goes first.
Honestly, I feel like it was okay for us. And Andrea, I don't want to speak for you either, but because we started our practice during the pandemic and because we started virtually, we didn't have that shift from seeing, our clients in person and then shifting to seeing our specific clients for that practice virtually. So I think that was easier on us because from the beginning for our private practice, we started virtual. That being said, all of the training that I had in our graduate program did not include training for virtual sessions, right? I mean, there's so many things that can go into that we never really learned at that capacity. So that part may be a little bit difficult, just navigating the simple things like Wi-Fi connections, being unstable in the middle of a really difficult conversation. And, if you see kids, for example, them kind of bouncing all over the place while you're on a call or just literally leaving the room and you're like, hello? Anyone
I don't mean to
there?
laugh, but because that's like a real problem.
Yeah, but also with confidentiality and HIPAA, like you don't want to speak too loudly. You want to maintain their confidentiality. And also, is anyone there? Are you coming back?
Yeah.
So, those elements I think were more difficult than the rapport building. I feel like the rapport building was okay, especially to your point. People were isolated, people were lonely. So I think even just being able to get on and talk virtually to another human was helpful for a lot of folks.
That's true. And if you think back, you guys didn't deal with this, but when I'm in corporate America and I was leading a marketing team and, I would say like I'm a very empathetic type of leader. And we had to make so many adjustments to how we were working. But one of the things that got real popular, and I think it got popular for personal friends too, but like the virtual happy hour, right? And it's like you're sitting there at a computer, and in reality, you're like drinking. Like for me, I was like drinking by myself, like in my house on a Friday at 5 p.m., which is whatever. That actually became a habit in pandemic times. But it was like you would still have to do that. And I found with my job, I was losing connections that were like really built on real interactions, but then like hiring people to my team without ever having met them and then trying to build rapport that way. And it was very hard. And I switched. So I would have like weekly one-to-ones with everyone on my team. And I decided at one point, I'm like, can we like use a checklist or something to talk about tasks? And can we just like talk about life? Like what's going on? You're engaged. How's wedding planning going? Stuff like that. And it helped kind of build that rapport, but it was still just such an odd time to try and like figure out what's going on when everyone's, this tiny little screen now. And I can't even imagine like kids running around, people getting up and leaving. But Andrea, what was it like for you, starting the private practice in general? What were your motivations for starting Human Therapists? And then too, if you want to touch on anything about like virtual and how that was good and bad for you in your experience.
Yeah, I mean, as Cassandra said, we had each other to bounce things off of, right? So a lot of therapists, when they go into private practice, it's just themselves. And I remember calling Cassandra millions of times and being like, do I have to call CPS for this? Do I have to do this? blah, blah, blah. Like everything is not black and white and it's so gray. And we would always have these conversations and we're like, what are other therapists doing? Obviously they're seeking supervision, but you have to make an appointment and make sure you don't have a partner
Mm-hmm.
necessarily to just bounce ideas off of. So that was a big thing for us too, was just they need somewhere to just be able to throw an idea out there, ask a question, of course, keeping HIPAA in mind, and get other input from other therapists, right? So that was definitely a big thing. And then we just started opening up about like little things. Oh my gosh, I had to go to the bathroom yesterday in my session. I literally said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I'll be right back." Is that weird? And then other people were like, "Oh my gosh, I go to the bathroom in session too." And it just turned into this camaraderie of like, oh my gosh, we are also human and it's okay to do very human things. Like the yawn was a huge one. We always talk about how embarrassing it is to yawn in session, which is ridiculous because it's not a sign that we're bored of you. It's
No.
it's a human natural, right? So, but
I
that's
saw you posted on the social the other day, like, let's normalize peeing mid-session. And I'm like, what's funny is like when I go, because I go back in person now most times, and I run in and I'm like, I gotta go pee, and then I like sit down and then I gotta pee again at the end. And so it's just like, if I have to do stuff like that, why wouldn't my therapist have to do stuff like that?
yeah.
We will
Totally is
never
normal.
stop talking about peeing in session if you need to. Like get on a soapbox about that.
And a
We're
lot
just not we're not listening empathetically or supporting the client as much as they deserve to be if we're sitting there like, I have to pee my pants so badly that I can't think or focus at all.
And yeah, that's what I would encourage people to think about when you have to pee and you're like in the car on a long car ride or something. Like how does that feel? What are you thinking about other than peeing?
Mhm.
You can't help it. So once again, it's like you're just like everybody else, and that's okay. So I love that you guys, again, I love the whole mission behind creating that community for therapists. And I think you guys have a lot of content out there too about how to start your own private practice, taking everything you guys have learned. And I think it's very good and kind of empowering for a lot of therapists to have these kinds of resources. And so what I want to ask you is, your whole mission is about humanizing therapists, right? I think that's obviously a great mission. But what I'm curious for you to both comment on is when people are experts, which therapists are considered experts in mental health, but like various subcategories of mental health. But how do you that dynamic that it creates, especially on social media, right? Like a lot of people view therapists as there's like a power dynamic almost, like they're the experts and stuff like that. But at the same time, with social media, that causes a lot of while it removes stigmas and stuff, it causes a lot of people to throw around therapy terms on social media, sort of weaponize something a therapist might say that's a general statement or a personal experience, and kind of use it as an authority, which is good in some cases but bad in the other. But I'm curious how you both have felt about how your mission of normalizing therapists as human beings kind of ties into how social media has become for therapists and people that consume therapy content. Andrea, you can go first. I'll just keep going back and forth. And I really, by the way, I appreciate you guys like not both talking over each other, because I've had multiple people on before and it's like, hold on, guys, we're going to do a talking stick. We're going to pass it around. So thank you for making that tolerable for the listeners.
Yeah. Causes for a couple awkward silences of us staring at each other, but we get there eventually.
Those will automatically cut out. That's the great thing about this Riverside thing, is it uses AI to like get rid of long silences that are longer than whatever you set. So I just set it to like longer than 2 seconds, cut it.
Love that.
Yeah.
Really cool. I almost forgot the question there. Well, I did forget the question there. I would say one of the things we've always said, and this goes back to when we started working with children, we would always tell the parents, you are the expert of your child. We can give you all the information on what it is we might be dealing with, and, from our background, from our education, the diagnosis that you're looking into or whatever it is, but you're the expert when it comes to your child. And I think that's really important to carry into all ages, all therapy sessions. You are the expert of yourself. You have to really look internally. We do a lot of somatic work also, and just, mind body connection type stuff, and use your intuition, use what your body is telling you, what's going on, and take the things you read on the internet, take what you want, leave what you want. If you hear something, look into it for yourself, do your own research. Therapists are out there doing a great job of trying to spread awareness and trying to educate, and it does not apply to everybody. And it's just important that, we've had so many clients come in with the TikTok diagnosis. And we're like, that's fantastic that you relate to this person, and I'm sure that's very validating for you. Now look into it on your own time in terms of what you actually need to take from what you're hearing, as opposed to, they said one thing that applies to me, so I must have OCD. Not necessarily. We can talk further about that now, So it's been kind of cool to see, especially teen clients coming in with their own diagnoses from TikTok, but wanting to talk further about what that might look like. So I think there is some good, but then there is the point of just like, you're your own expert. So please do your own research and education.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I think it's like WebMD came for regular doctors, and now TikTok therapy is coming for mental health diagnosis. And it's like the DSM-5 is the tool to diagnose, not TikTok. And it's all very nuanced. And that's what I think like diagnoses are very validating, or can be very validating, both mental health and physical health. I don't remember. I know we talked maybe like a month or two ago. I was sick with the flu for like 3 weeks. I got better for like a week. I was sick again for 2 weeks. I got better. And then I got sick a third time. And I just like when I finally went to the doctor, and like, you have influenza A, now you have a sinus infection. Cause I'm like, good, I'm not going crazy, and I think that translates into mental health as well. But I think what I think the internet has done to mental health is it's kind of stripped the nuance away, where there's a test for the flu. Like, you don't go to a mental health professional or a counselor and then get a diagnosis that day. It's like, it's about behaviors, it's about repetitiveness, it's the nuance, and there's certain things that will only come out through periods of time. And I think that it's that TikTok mindset almost of doing everything super quick and getting instant gratification that could be fueling some of the people that come in and say, well, I saw this person does this, I do this, I have OCD.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really great distinction too, Nick, because for us as therapists, if we're going out there and putting content out, regardless of if it's, specific symptoms that correlate with a diagnosis or just inspiration, things like that, we want to be mindful too and do our part, because we don't know the full story of every single person that might be viewing our content. Every person's page that we might land on. We don't know everyone. We don't know their story. We don't know, how they interact with the world. We know certain DSM-5 diagnoses, right? We know our education, our background, our experience, but we don't know each individual person that's consuming our content. So yeah, I think there's definitely a level of responsibility on our end too, when we're putting things out there.
There's no like real ethical guidelines surrounding social media, right? In your practice, like there's kind of stuff that maybe could be applied, but do you feel like there's true ethical guidelines around social media and how therapists present?
I think the guidelines are more specific when it comes to, okay, you're not going to ethically want to be friends with your client on social media and chat with them back and forth on social media, right? Like there's things in our practice policies regarding, okay, if you decide to follow us, that is up to you, and some disclaimers about that. This is what that might look like. People may assume the nature of our relationship if they see you as a follower. So that, I think, is a little bit more clear than how should therapists, how do therapists show up on social media? And to be honest with you, with the specific content that we put out there, we've gotten some backlash about that too.
Sure. How does that backlash come? Like, the internet is a hateful place. So I just want to preface it with that. It is a hateful place. It is a cesspool of negativity a lot of the time. What kind of feedback do you guys get? Do you get it from therapists, or do you find it from like random trolls on the internet, or both? Oh, wow.
I mean, we can literally put out there like, therapist, happy Friday, you're doing an amazing job today. And we'll high five each other and be like, yeah, empowering. Oh no, we'll get, yeah, because you're charging too much and you're taking advantage of people. And like, they just find everything to say. No matter what you put out there, there's just going to be somebody.
Yeah, I feel that way too. I don't know. I always compare the internet to like Philadelphia sports crowds. I don't know if you guys watch sports at all, but the Philadelphia Eagles fans booed Santa in like the late 90s when he came out and was like waving to everyone at Christmas time. They booed Santa. And to me, that's the internet. Like you could literally come out and say, I hope everyone's having a great day. You're doing great. And there's someone that is going to hate you for something. And it's just the crazy world we live in now. I just don't get it.
I'm going to do that next time.
All right, internet is the Philadelphia fans, sports fans. It's like, woo.
We'll be reminding each other of that the next time we get because usually we'll share with each other the comment and process through it together. One of us feels anxious about it or has imposter syndrome over it. And so the next time that happens, that's what we're going to be reminding each other of.
Actually, imposter syndrome, I think everybody has it, but when you show up online in the way that you do and you get that negativity, do you think that like fosters your own imposter syndrome? Because you guys, whether you think of this or not, your therapy community most likely views you as leaders, right? So now you've got almost this, I hope you know this, but I think you probably have thought about it, or maybe not, but you're kind of leaders of the community, right? So does that give you those imposter feelings, or is it really just like negativity that comes in that makes you go, are we doing this right? Or what are your thoughts around that or experiences?
Right now, I think I'm processing the fact that you mentioned that we're kind of leaders of the community, because
I saw both of your faces and I was like, I don't know if I should have said that.
No, perfectly fine. I think it's just a different perspective that we don't often think of, but I'm sure that
your reluctant leaders, though, those are the best ones. Like those are the ones people trust because you're not trying to be a leader. People are following you because you are.
Yeah. I feel like we normally think of it as I hate that term, but as just kind of this community where we're all in unison. We're all, going through the same things day to day and struggling with the same concepts. But yeah, so it took me a minute. Sorry about that, to process that statement. I would say for myself, yeah, it does contribute to imposter syndrome. We put something out there, and like Andrea said, it could be so genuine and innocent, and then we get certain feedback, and for me personally, it does sometimes take a hit. And we've talked about this before, like where one of us is like, I don't want to make content then,
Mm-hmm.
or for a week or two we're just out. We're like, no, we're good. And then we kind of, bounce back. And yeah, I think there's some level of resiliency there when it comes to social media and content creation.
Did you have anything you wanted to add, Andrea?
I think it's getting better, but I think cancel culture was a real struggle for a while.
Yeah.
To the point of we're reading a book and the author does something inappropriate, or the author does something that lots of people from a certain population are affected by, and it ends up making us, I don't know, it puts us in a position of, do we continue or do we not? And who are we offending if we do, type of thing. Or, drinking coffee from a certain place. There's just so many things that some of them we don't even know about at the time. And then we find out after the fact, after we start getting hateful comments for something that we thought was innocent, and we have to educate ourselves. Yeah. It's just that cancel culture of like, oh, well, this person did that and you said their name out loud, so now we hate you. And you're just like, I didn't even know that person did that. So
I think cancel culture, I think it is getting better. I decided probably like 2 or 3 years ago, I'm like, I'm not going to let culture cancel me. I'm just not going to let them. I'm just going to keep going. And, hilarious to me because the internet will get mad about anything. I'm always surprised, but like never shocked. So like one of my, and I'm the same way, by the way, on the content side. Like I decided maybe a year and a half ago, I'm like, if I don't feel like posting, why am I putting pressure on myself? If I don't want to deal with the comments, I'm not going to post. If I don't want to, if I have something to say, I will, or I have something I want to share about my life or whatever, I will. But like, I'm not putting any pressure on myself to post. I think that's the best way to do it. Unless you're, and you guys have a business tied to it, kind of like, I know that's it's a murky water where you kind of have to, but you'll feel much better. Not you, well, you know already, but like other people, you'll feel much better if you take all the pressure off yourself to post on social media. And if you can find a way to not really care what a stranger thinks. And people will literally cancel Santa Claus for giving presents to kids. So if you think about it that way, if your intentions are pure, your intentions are good, I think people should cut slack. I think it is getting better, but I go back to my favorite post that people went crazy over was on election day. I just made a post encouraging everyone to vote for what matters to them and not listen to all the noise. Don't listen to celebrities who are telling you what to vote for. Don't turn on the news and listen to the back and forth. Think about what matters to you, specific issues, find out who aligns with those and go vote for them. I was a Trumper. I was a Kamala person. I was everything in between. And it's just like, I literally just told people to vote on what they feel is important. I didn't tell people what to vote for. Like every other celebrity was, and I don't think of myself as a celebrity, but like other people were telling you who to vote for. I'm just telling you to make your own decision. You know better than anyone else on who you should vote for. Totally. Like I lost like 6,000 followers. It was just like nuts how people just go crazy over the simplest things. So I think just with cancel culture for everyone, like just be cancelable. Just be uncancelable. Let the people that want to cancel you quit you and go away and just keep being you.
That example was such a good one too, though, of like somebody takes your post and they interpret it their own way. That's not even, you didn't say anything specific, but in their minds, because of their interpretation, you did.
Yeah.
It's just,
and I think it's
one for when we're going through things, we'll remind each other of that too.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like, and this is the biggest learning that I have coming out of reality TV is that I had done such a good job through therapy and like a lot of work on myself, on surrounding myself with good people and keeping my circle small. I know I don't share everything about my life with people. So there's no, drama. And then I went from having this pretty like well-oiled machine of a life to having my world like exploded and opening up to so many people. And it just really opened my eyes to how like damaged people are, how angry some people are, how hurt people are, how people will literally project, again, like over the internet, sometimes in real life, like project their own experiences onto people without any concept whatsoever that they're doing that. And I think when with my thing, people are saying, oh, you're a Trumper, or oh, you're a libtard or whatever, innuendo or saying they threw at me in DMs or in comments or whatever. To me, it was just like, that is 100% them, not me. I didn't say or do anything to provoke that feeling. They had something going on inside. And even when people are mean to people on reality TV shows, I feel like I'm the dad of the internet every time a new season of Love is Blind comes out, because I remind people, like, if you feel like you need to say something, look inside before you say it, because it's probably most likely something to do with you and nothing to do with the person that you saw on TV. I think people have to do a better job of being self-reflective, and that will help everyone, like the people you're hurting and you yourself, heal. So that's my soapbox on that.
That was inspiring, though. I mean, that just speaks volumes to the work that you've done on yourself too, Nick, because I mean, we're therapists sitting here and I'm like, yeah, we get those comments sometimes on social media, and it's difficult to navigate that at times. And when you get to a place where you make yourself uncancelable, then you're you know your values, your morals, you know who you are well enough that those comments, those DMs, sure, they're distasteful, but they're not going to cause significant damage because you're confident in who you are. And I think that's a huge, learning curve with just showing up on social media too, because regardless of who you are and how you show up, as you said, it's gonna happen. And, even for myself as a therapist, it's been a learning opportunity of, okay, I don't have to let this person, decide who I am and what I stand for.
That's such a good way to put it. Don't let other people decide who you are and what you stand for. Beautifully said.
I'm speaking to myself right now too.
Well, and to be clear, like I talk a tough game, but like the DMs still sting a little, or when you see stuff people say about you that they don't think you're ever going to see, it stings. But I kind of think of it now. It's like a paper cut. It's like, ow. And then it's like, oh, that's not that bad. But I'm sure you're going to get this the rest of your lives. And the people that are cruel, and to say, like, there is also constructive feedback. Like, I think, Andrea, you alluded to this earlier, like there's times people will say things that you just didn't know. And you're like, oh, I do want to be more sensitive to this. I do want to be more understanding of this. I don't want to, oh, that was another thing with that voting post. I got a lot of, this is your white privilege showing. I got a lot of that. And I was like, telling people to vote. Okay. How is that my white privilege showing? Anyway, some of it, I'm happy to get the constructive feedback on how I can be more inclusive and how I can be more sensitive to certain things. And I've gotten plenty of that too. So it isn't all bad, but there's a lot of this stuff where it's like, be constructive. Tell me, don't call me something. Tell me how I could have said this in a way that would have been more appealing or understanding or sensitive to you. And I will do that. Like, I want to do that. I don't ever want anyone to feel bad about themselves.
Yeah. We just had this conversation the other day of, we're in our DMs. That sounds so weird, but we're in our DMs talking to people all the time. We're interacting with the community all the time because, like Cassandra said, we see it as a cohesive community. We're all in this together. And if you have an issue with a certain thing that you keep seeing or that you see, DM us, send it to us so we know, so we can fix that, as opposed to like writing a nasty comment on a post that everybody else is also going to see that is essentially just shaming. Yeah. It's like there are other ways to go about it if you truly feel that what you have to say is so necessary.
And that's why I tell people through my social media, I'm like, it's not necessary. What's necessary is you stop, check in with yourself. Why do I feel like this? Why am I angry? Why am I upset? And keep it in there, work it out in there. And then maybe you have something constructive that comes out of it, or maybe you don't. Either way, like if it's constructive, be constructive about it. If it's not, figure out how you can be less triggered in that situation in the future.
We should do a
love that
with what we should put you as a disclaimer on our page.
I know. I love
that. I feel like the dad of the internet when I have to say things like this. And I like I said, I post a video every time a new season of Love is Blind comes out, and I'm always like, remember, it's like do unto others as you would want them to do unto you, or remember what they taught you in fifth or when you were 5 years old. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. It's like these lessons we learned in kindergarten can be applied to adulthood.
Yeah, and with social media now, everything is that instant gratification, right? So like you said, there's no pausing. We're just like in attack mode, quick. This is how I feel, and I'm going to put it out there, right? And not necessarily think of any of the consequences that might come with that. And if only we pause. That's it. Just pause. You don't have to come full stop. Just pause for a moment and think this through. Yeah, that was insightful.
I couldn't agree more. So I wanna shift gears a little bit because I actually do have questions about what it's like when people join your community. So in a nutshell, in your own elevator speech, and you can each say your own thing, but what would kind of be the description that you give to a therapist who's like, oh, I would benefit from joining this community. I'd love to meet other therapists and have that sort of collaboration. What can they expect if they join the human therapist group or community?
You start, Cassandra. I'll follow your lead.
Yeah, I mean, to provide them a reminder that, we don't leave our humanity at the door when we step into the therapy room. And joining our community is kind of this safe space that we don't always get as providers, right? Like, many of us are in our own therapy or have been in the past or whatnot. And that's great. And at the same time, our one-on-one therapists that we have, they have their own ethical boundaries that they can't cross with us. So when you enter this community, it's almost like now we have our own little sacred space together where we can come together and collaborate. Like Andrea said, we can share good stories too. It's not always, how difficult it can be to be a therapist, but it's also the good stuff, like the glimmers that we get to hear every single day. And just be in community in all of that, the good, bad, the ugly, the gray, all of it.
Andrea, I'd love to hear what you have to add to that.
What do I have to add to that?
Beef sticks and coffee.
Or you could just say retweet and we can go from there.
It's kind of a retweet moment. We are building currently a lot more within the community, a lot of other options for therapists. Cassandra, I don't know how much we want to. So we're currently working on a wellness space for therapists so they can join that specifically and get, monthly calls where we all connect and talk about, what's going on within our personal lives, our professional lives. It's like personal and professional development, while also getting a little wellness package, if you will, daily journal prompts, yoga classes, meditations, all the things that as therapists kind of help us to relax on our own and practice what we preach, right? We have to prioritize our own self-care too. So I think our little motto on there is something about pouring into ourselves like we pour into our coffee cups, because, we drink a lot of coffee, but we don't necessarily ever pour into ourselves. So yeah, we're getting excited to bring people on to talk about their expertise and have others ask questions and just to be more interactive and just to have therapists really feel like they can ask questions, get answers, referrals, throw out their own stuff out there, if they want to promote something. Just it feels a lot nicer than some of like the Facebook pages. Mm-hmm. It's just, there won't be any bullying tolerated.
Yeah. Well, again, this is where, and I'm not saying this because I'm trying to scare you, but this is leadership. You guys are taking a community of people that had Facebook, what do they call that? Facebook groups as their option, and you're giving them a space that they can connect with their peers, learn, promote their own expertise, their own work. And that's huge. Like, that's not something that exists in this space outside of, these one-offs in Facebook or wherever, or Discords or whatever there is out there that may have something. So I applaud you for doing that. And I think you're going to find a lot more people finding you and joining your community and elevating the human nature of being a therapist. And one thing that you mentioned that I think is also good to chat about real quickly is how I can imagine being a therapist is a very hard job. It's draining. You're shifting gears a lot. How do you, you mentioned some things, but how do each of you kind of pour back into your cup when you've got family and friends and children and all of these responsibilities that go along with your job? How do you make sure that you pour into your cup, keep yourselves full, and keep yourselves at the best place you can be at?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think it's always a work in progress, right? At the beginning of this journey, I would say that I was not great at that. Took a lot of my work home with me. And, as therapists, we're naturally very empathetic people. And, sometimes it's difficult to separate and not kind of carry that weight with you outside of the work setting. So I think it's really important to be on your own journey, whether that looks like, taking care of yourself through seeing a therapist or taking care of yourself through movement, exercise. So just to be on your own journey and constantly be checking in with yourself, right? And what you need, because if we're not checking in on those things, we're not going to be of value to the clients that we work with. So yeah, I've definitely found it beneficial to seek my own therapy when things get tough. And I think too, having a private practice, and again, if we talk about privilege, this is a privilege that we get in having our own practice that we didn't when we were in agency work, of, setting our schedules and our caseloads. Because if you go walk into a, mental health clinic right now and you ask one of those clinicians what their caseload looks like, chances are it's outrageous, very difficult to keep up with. And that is a privilege that we get in private practice, is to decide, okay, this is how many clients that I can see within a day and still feel okay at the end of the day, not feel depleted, not feel like I'm not able to support, the last client of the day, feel like I can get a beef stick, some coffee in between sessions, pee if I need to, right? And not run myself and spread myself so thin that by the time I'm leaving the therapy room and entering, my family, I'm not taking it out on them, or I'm not carrying it with me. And I can actually be present in all of the other roles that we have, outside of the therapist role, as mom, as wife, as sister, as daughter, all of those things.
That being said, it was really hard to hold those boundaries. I'm speaking for both of us, but we found we had many conversations about, we would set our schedule and then somebody would have to reschedule and they'd be like, okay, well, what about 7 p.m.? And we're like, well, technically we could make it work because we don't have a supervisor or a boss telling us like, nope, hard cut off at 5. So we would find ourselves extending our hours or working on days where we don't work. And there's usually a reason we're not working, because there's children home or something like that. So really setting those boundaries, I think, was huge for us in terms of, sure, we'll be flexible as much as possible, but we also don't have to be flexible just because we technically could. Because I think there was a lot of that, of just like, well, our day, I guess, is endless, so we can technically schedule anyone whenever we want. And that got rough. That's
almost like a business startup vibe, where it's like, oh, you've got to take every call. You've got to try and make every sale. You've got to get as many clients / customers in business. It's the same kind of mentality. So it's interesting to see that kind of translated over. And how did you guys decide, or I'm sure it's ongoing, but like what those boundaries were going to be, and what the risk reward kind of benefits were? Was it one thing, or just over time you're like, okay, this isn't going to work for me. This isn't going to work for me.
I think the hours was the main thing to start. We both kind of were like, you know what? We would rather lose out on some money than pull hours that don't make sense, because a lot of the times it was never an emergency. It was never a client in crisis where we needed to make that work. It was always just, we were catering to the client's wants as opposed to their needs. And we just realized that we can set our own schedule and we can set those boundaries and just say, no, I'm sorry, we stop working at this time, and they will make it work if they really want to see us, type of thing. So it was, and sure, like, to be completely transparent, you would lose out on money in those cases sometimes, because you're not seeing one extra client during the day that maybe would bring in a little more income because you want more time with your family.
Right.
So,
which is a very human thing to want, to tie that back in, right? To have time with your friends and your family and for yourself, and making that time is important, whether you're a therapist or working, a different job.
Yeah. And it just felt a lot better. I'll speak for myself personally, seeing less clients during a day and being able to remember every little thing about that client, because you're not seeing 8, 9, 10 clients in one day where you're just getting everything jumbled together, which is also a very human thing. How do you have 8 conversations in a row and remember the difference between all the little details? Like, that's
how I feel when I'm in like Zoom meetings back to back to back for like 4 or 5 hours. And I'm like, I don't even remember what happened in these things anymore. I think people now in like corporate jobs like me can relate in that sense, where it's like, if you have back-to-back meetings, how do you feel after that? Well, when you're a therapist, you're basically in back-to-back meetings most of the time.
And I think that's a really great reminder, Andrea, because when we were working on building those boundaries, especially in the beginning, there was some, I don't know, guilt, shame surrounding that because we're working with mental health, right? It's not like, we're in a different profession. We're literally working with the mental health of humans. So you also feel like, oh gosh, I really should make myself available for this person. They're going through it right now. Right. And so something that was helpful to remember is that even when the boundaries feel, uncomfy for us, they're actually helping the client, because the more and more we spread ourselves thin, the more and more we cross our boundaries, the more resentful we'll become about the work that we're doing. And then we're not showing up in the ways that best support our clients. So I think that was a really helpful reminder too.
That is such a good point, because so many therapists, I think, especially during COVID and after COVID, got so burnt out because there was such a shortage of available therapists that people couldn't find them. And I remember my therapist telling me like how many clients she was seeing at the time, and it was like 8 too many for her, and she had to like work it back down to a manageable caseload. And I think that too is like a reminder to people of the humanity that goes into being a therapist. And if you start resenting your clients or having frustration with your clients because you're burnt out, nobody's benefiting. So good. One last thing I wanted to ask you guys. So you've talked a little bit about what's coming in your community. You guys have a book club. How often, if a therapist joins, like how often do you meet for your book club? How do you engage with them on a regular basis, and what could they expect out of those engagements? And what books do you read? That's another one.
Book club meets once a week, and depending on what book we're reading, we read 1 to a couple chapters, usually around 10-ish pages per session. We are currently reading Atomic Habits, which is a great one.
I have it.
So have you read it?
I've skimmed it. I'm a skimmer.
Yeah, understandable. I think we were all skimmers, and that's part of the reason why we joined the book club. Keep saying they joined is because they need to actually read the book all the way through. And then we are reading The Gift of Therapy next.
Oh, I haven't even heard of that. We've
heard such good things about. I'm very excited. It's funny because you asked like how you interact and stuff, right? So we have a little hub in our book club in the community that we can talk through. But reading Atomic Habits, we all kind of picked up these new habits that we're working towards. So we're all like Apple Watch friends, and we have a group text going right now, trying to hold each other accountable. So it's like book club turned into this little accountability group, and I don't know, they're our little internet friends, which is fun.
I love that. Do you guys ever meet? I can edit this out if you want, but like, do you guys ever meet in real life, or do you plan to have any like conventions or anything like that, or get-togethers, meetups?
It would be fun, but like our book club people specifically are from everywhere.
I figured.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's actually a few from Chicago, Nick.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, but they're kind of all over. So it would be lots of fun, but we have yet to do that.
Yeah, I was just curious. And that would be so hard to do too, if coordinating people and people wanting to come. And I can't actually, it sounds like a terrible idea from a planning perspective.
We got some Canadians, like we got a lot going on in there.
Maybe sometime in the future when you guys can hire an event coordinator to plan it out for everyone, and all you got to do is show up.
Get a helicopter to go pick everybody up, and then put us all back into place. Yeah,
exactly. Well, I really think what you guys are doing is great. I think it's very much needed. I have a lot of friends who are therapists, and they have their little support groups. Some of them have their own private practices. Some of them work in their own area. And I think a lot of time it's been very isolating, especially the last few years. So what you're doing, you're leading on, and I'm grateful for it. I know that there's people that I've started to kind of send to check you guys out too, that are in the therapy world or the mental health world. So thanks for what you're doing. I think it's much needed. And I hope you realize that you're helping a lot of people feel part of something more than the isolated world that they may have felt in before. So thank you for that. And don't let people become uncancelable. Such a hard word to say. It's almost as hard as your last name, Cassandra.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you for, taking the time to meet with us and to prioritize having conversations about mental health. I do think that conversation is being held more often, but it's not always that, you meet other people, especially through the internet, who want to open up and have these types of honest conversations. So thank you for allowing that.
Well, thank you for saying that. The whole purpose of this podcast is to help people tell their stories, share their experiences, and hopefully help some people learn. But before we head out, I'm going to give you guys a chance to ask me anything, and then we can wrap up here. If you have questions that you want to ask, I'll start with Andrea, although I have lost track of who I've started with last. But so I may have skipped Cassandra. I don't know.
Oh boy, I feel like you have such serious wisdom in there. I don't even know where to go with this, but I think I'm wondering, based on your experience and your background, what's something, if you could have one message touch everybody, what would that be?
I think my message for people across the world is that you really need to do the work and do the right thing. My ethos is do the right thing. That doesn't mean I always do the right thing, but I do what I think is the right thing. And because of the person I try to be for myself so that I can show up for others, I feel that even if it's the wrong thing, like it's coming from the right place, and that's what's most important. So I encourage everyone to look inside, figure out what matters to you, find your core values. Mine is really to just act with integrity, act with authenticity, be yourself. Not everyone's for you. And I think if my message to everyone would just be do the work inside so you can show up in the world as your most authentic self. And that doesn't mean that everyone's going to like you. It doesn't mean bad things aren't going to happen to you. It doesn't mean you're not going to make mistakes, but at least you do it with the best intentions and you're trying to do the right thing.
I wish I could record that and just play it for myself at night before
I don't think I don't know that I have a relaxing voice that would be good to listen to before bed, but thanks. Cassandra, did you have a question that you wanted to ask? That's okay.
Sorry, I'm showing some more humanness. I apologize.
Yeah, it's totally okay.
We might want to cut that. So Andrea asked a similar question that I was going to, but I guess breaking it down a little bit further, getting a little bit more specific for our, community of therapists, is there one takeaway or any insight you would like to specifically share with the therapist community based on, your lived experiences?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've never been asked anything like that. I guess this is a unique scenario, though. Two things I think I would say. One is by and large, I think therapists showing up on social media is a net positive. I think there's a lot of people out there that are probably not happy about it, stuff like that. I would say to the community, ignore that. Keep doing what you're doing, because the progress that I think we've made removing stigmas around mental health has been a net positive. So if you're someone who shows up on social media or you're not, just keep doing the work and try and remember, everyone's not going to like you no matter what, even if you're Santa Claus. Right. So I would say that message. And then I would say a message too, just from the reality TV side of things, is that there is a authoritative nature that people have to therapists. You're experts for a reason. You're educated. You have experience. It can be very hurtful to people on reality TV when they see a therapist doing commentary on them or on their relationship or whatever, whether that be YouTube, whether that be on social media. And so if you are someone who does that, which may or may not be in your community, I've talked to some of them. I've talked to some of them on my podcast. I've been on theirs. It can be hurtful to see someone who has that experience and that expertise and that authority commenting on something that's a narrative without context, without knowing that person. And I would just encourage therapists to be cautious of the harm that can do if someone sees it, and the harm that could do if your audience sees it and then reacts to it when you don't know that person in real life. So that would be my two messages that I would say to the community. Keep doing what you're doing, except that, tone that down a little bit. That makes sense. Well, again, I want to thank you guys so much for coming on. Thank you for the work you do. All of the links for everything is going to be down in the show comments if people want to connect with you, if they want to join your community, but give you a chance to tell people where they can follow you on social media and your website as well. Whoever wants that one.
I'm on this side of you in my camera, so you're going like this, and I'm like Instagram is at Your Human Therapist. That's plural with an S at the end. And then www.humantherapist.com is the community.
Awesome. Those links will all be in the show notes. I'm also going to put your link tree down there because you guys have some good content in there for therapists as well. And thanks again for coming on today. I had a really good time chatting with you and learning more about your story and your work. So thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Nick. We appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of Eyes Wide Open. If you enjoy the show, the best way to support us is by sharing or dropping a review. For more information and content, check out engagewithnick.com or find me on Instagram at nthompson513. Don't go through life blind. Do the work so you can show up in the world with your eyes wide open.